Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits, where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us to unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets to effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
Welcome back, my friends, my fellow nonprofit nerds and rock stars. I am so excited for you to be a part of this next conversation. Alberto Carrazco joined me. He is part of the NonprofitsHQ team, and he's got some really fantastic insight. First of all, the thing that you will not miss in this episode is his infectious laugh. I do call it out and I absolutely adore it. I shared with him offline. I could just listen to like a recording of his laugh. It is just, it just makes me so happy. He also shares a lot about his passion for D&D. That's right, Dungeons and Dragons. And he shares how he will lean into that on times when he feels that he needs to de-stress and just, kind of do some improv and take his mind off of work. And then he also shares a little bit about the difference between nerds and geeks. So I really enjoyed my conversation with Alberto. I think you will too. And before I hand it over to that conversation, I do want to give a shout out of gratitude to this season's sponsor. Thank you to Nonprofits HQ, again, where Alberto joins us from, and also Chazen and Company. All right, get settled in or keep doing your walk or drive, whatever it is you're doing, and enjoy the conversation here. All right. Well, hey there. We are back. Another fantastic episode here, Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. And I am thrilled to have today's guest. You are meeting him at the same time that I'm meeting him. So we are diving into this conversation together. So Alberto, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Jarrett.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you said yes without any hesitation, which I really appreciate. I do want to share, though, that Zach Brown was on last season. And so we've had, a partner or colleague on your team. Tell us a little bit about Nonprofits HQ, a little bit about your role and how you and Zach do work together. Because shout out for Zach's episode. If you've not listened to it yet, go ahead and scroll back and do have a listen to that.
Oh, thank you. When it comes to Nonprofits HQ, we are an all-in-one management platform for nonprofit organizations. So from events to ticketing to fundraising, campaigns, CRMs, emailing, marketing tools, grant writing, all of these different features are things that our platform is capable of doing. And it brings it all together in one place so that nonprofit organizations, nonprofit leaders don't have to have different subscriptions to different platforms, different tools. It's all in one space so that they can keep their information safe and working for them. And so that's what our platform does, really helps them manage everyday operations. When it comes to Zach and I working together, I'm trying to keep track of your questions. When it comes to Zach and I working together, oh, thank you. When it comes to Zach and I working together, oh man, he has this lovely tattoo on his forearm. It says, "Move fast, break shit." And so it's always great working together because I'm very much the kind of individual who is much more wanting to understand every single detail about everything before taking a step. And so when me and Zach are working together, it's very much more of he has the vision, he has the drive, and he gets us to the point. And then while we're on the way, I'm like, okay, but let's also think about X, Y, and Z. And while we're moving together, he's pushing the drive. And at the same time, I'm like, ooh, let's not turn that way. Let's not go that route. And that's usually how we kind of work together is he's got that vision, he's got that drive, and I'm there to make sure that if there's like a potential thing that we shouldn't go into, we don't. But ultimately, working with Zach is fantastic for those reasons.
I think we all need an Alberto in our life, someone that's like, oh, wait, don't do that.
Well, like it's always it's I think it's very much a balancing act with Zach and I, because with me, right, it's especially when it comes to, because like everybody has that oversensory paralysis where they have a lot of things that they're thinking about, and they get to a point where they're like, well, I don't know what step to take. And so
Yeah.
that's the benefit of having someone like Zach who's like, it's okay, we'll break it, we'll fix it, we'll move back, and we'll move on, we'll move forward. And so that's kind of like the balancing act that we play, where he's like, yes, let's do this, and I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then that's we're going, I'm like, oh, what about this, what about this, and then we kind of move everything in the right direction.
That
But no,
sounds
it's
fantastic.
lovely.
Yeah. Like a very yin yang, kind of a work relationship. Well, we dove straight into the deep end, which is something that I tend to do in my everyday personal conversation. So thank you for meeting me at that space. Let's start into really the conversation of what you're invited today. And I really want to ask, although I've already dropped one of your names, I like to start, what are some of the names that you go by? And, again, I would say you're a navigator slash co-pilot with some of those examples that you just shared in the beginning. But yeah, Alberto, tell us some of the names that you go by in your, I don't know, everyday life.
Oh my gosh. Well, startup land, your everyday life is work. So I guess the hat that I wear, or the name that I get called the most, is COO because of Nonprofits HQ. But outside of Nonprofits HQ, I guess I get called Dungeon Master. So I'm
Okay.
very, you're gonna, well, yeah, I guess I'm a total nerd, likewise, when it
Okay.
comes to things, just because, well,
Yeah.
I am a huge fan of D&D. So I love playing Dungeons and Dragons with, like, whenever I have like the free time, whenever I have the downtime, the capacity of like taking a breath for about an hour to 2 hours. That's about what I do. I just run Dungeons and Dragons, and that's what I do. But
So you are probably the fifth person that I've heard this from in, I would say, a short span of time, including my virtual assistant, Renee, is a big D&D fan and player, her and her husband. She was on this season as well. So I'll have to, I don't know, connect you two if that's even D&D etiquette. But I love learning about it. My son does play. I know his dad plays a little bit. I've never been involved with it, but I love that you also like proudly own that title of Dungeon Master and
oh my
nerd.
gosh, absolutely. Because I mean, altogether, people, especially when it's startup land, right? Workaholics, everybody's doing everything related to work, and even when they take the time off, you find a way to kind of get everything rolled back into work. So when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, it's very much the same kind of like, okay, I have a plan. We're telling a story. We're creating a product. We're creating services, and these are the
Yeah.
potential hiccups, these are the potential outcomes, and then you have users, or in this case players for Dungeons and Dragons, who will go through what you build, and then as they start poking holes, or they start using, or start elaborating on the story, of course the story grows. Same with the platform. As users go on and they say, hey, we also need to do X, Y, and Z, that grows the platform, that grows the product. So all in all, yes, it's like, I'm a dungeon master. I love playing D&D. I love writing the story. And at the same time, I just attribute it to like, oh yeah, I'm also building a platform. I'm also helping create an environment for nonprofits to thrive. And the more users we have on, the more players we have creating this story, the larger this platform gets, the bigger our functionality, and the bigger that the entire community is. And so, oh my gosh, see I'll just go on and drive on about D&D, because yes, absolutely, that's what I do. And here's another one
Love the
for you.
passion.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes. No, please stop me. I will continue talking about D&D for like hours. So please
I have
go ahead,
so many
continue.
questions, which I'm gonna have to schedule a separate conversation. But yeah, tell us, because you're about to say there's another perhaps name that you carry.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess commonly, and Zach will probably laugh at this, but I commonly get called bro. Just because I
Okay.
love going, I love going to the gym. Yeah, honestly, there'll be a rough day, and I'm like, all right, well, I can't get everybody together for a game of D&D. All right, what are we doing next? And so it's just me running off to the gym and crying or pushing out my emotions on the bench press. So yeah, no, that's absolutely. I'll be on the bench press. I'm like, hey, bro, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, this is what's happening.
That
But
is
that's
fantastic.
those are some of the names that I get called. But yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like you have a lot of fun. First of all, like, I've got to call out your laugh. It is infectious. It just makes me smile talking to you. I'm sure our listeners are enjoying it as well. You've mentioned a lot, I feel already, a little bit of the hats you wear, right? Both in that professional side, the personal side, the connection between your work life and this D&D passion. What are some of these other hats? Like, what do they look like?
Well, when it comes to, I'll start with the easy one, which is D&D, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons,
Okay.
I'm the barkeep. I'm the cleric that you come across. I'm the rogue that tried to like open up a door for you, or I'm that merchant who's a little troll and trying to sell you cursed items. I'm all of that in D&D, but in Nonprofits HQ, you know, and it's a lot easier to say which hats don't I wear. And I'd have to say probably my least favorite hat to wear is and I'm sure Zach agrees with this too because he also hates it, is probably just CFO. We're like, did you get the receipts? And I'm like, what receipts? So that's probably our least favorite hat to wear. And so but yes, no, I mean, marketing, sales, product development, success specialists, customer support. What else? Oh my gosh, assistant to each other because we'll make appointments and then we'll be driving somewhere and then Zach tells me, "Hey, we also have to do this," and I'm like, "That's today. We can't go to that. We're going to this." And so we're constantly just, and he'll do the same thing. I'll tell him like, "Hey, we have to do this with this individual," and he'll tell me, "But we're meeting with this other person," and I'm like, "Oh, oof, let me reschedule." So ultimately, those are the hats that we like probably least like to wear is schedulers
Yeah.
and CFOs because put receipts and we're like, we forgot about getting a picture of that receipt. Should have done better,
Yeah.
but it is what it is in startup land.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I'm in my 16th year of being a consultant, business owner here. Finances are still, I would say, my least favorite, especially the administrative tasks that go along with that, like the receipts, like the
Mhm.
W-9s I need to collect from people I work with. Like there's a lot of moving pieces. And if that's not your passion and that's not, I call it your zone of genius, like we're not gonna thrive in that area. So
Absolutely. And so, yeah, no, we've had to like start making little habits of what we do to get better. So, for example, in the receipts realm, whenever we use the card for anything, the first question we ask, did we take a picture? Did we take a picture? If
yes,
the answer is not yes, or is your phone out? If the answer is not yes, then you need to. So we're getting
need
better,
to do
but
that. Yeah.
biggest Achilles heel for us.
Well, that seems to roll right into the next question is really about how do you handle all of the things from your personal professional commitments? Because let's be honest, friends, like this receipt picture taking, that's a commitment. That's one we all need to
Mhm.
do, right? So, what are some of the other tools that you use, Alberto, where you really do, find resources to help you, systems, processes, automation, that navigate, all of those commitments? Because there's a lot between your work life, your personal life, and anything in between.
Oh, absolutely. And so just to put a plug in there, we all love that set it and forget it kind of activities where you can just do the thing that you want to do and not have to worry about, did you
Yeah.
get that receipt? Did you do all of this? And so that's kind of the goal with everything that we do. And I think that comes from like where we come from, right? So, and I'm sure both in both the startup land and in the nonprofit space, everybody is going to understand that feeling of, well, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And so it's that, I would say it's probably that kind of, um, that fear driving you, right? Like, well, if I don't do it, who else is going to do it? And so when it comes to either startup land or nonprofit space, you're constantly having responsibilities that you have to do because your organization, your business, it needs it to thrive, it needs it to succeed. And so it's just making that commitment to yourself, and in nonprofit space as well, right? If the mission is dear and near to your heart, you will bleed and sweat whatever that mission is. And so similarly with startup land, whenever you have something and you're building on a product or a service or whatever your business is, you're gonna have that thing that you wake up every morning and the first thought of your day is that one item that you've either forgot or you are trying to do today. And so it's really identifying your passion. And when that passion is identified, those habits, although they take time because they are habits, habits usually take about 3 weeks for you to build. But you start by creating actionable small bites that'll eventually lead you to that overall habit that you want to develop. And so with the receipt, for example, me and Zach, whenever we would go buy something, we would always mockingly like say, "Did you get a picture?" And then the other person would be like, "You, that's what you sound like." And so we'd mock each other, and I think that's kind of what helped us with that receipt problem. Is sort of like just create some habits that you do. Or some small little bite-sized things that you can do that you know is going to be memorable, either because it's ridiculous or
Right.
because it's important or whatever the case may be. Just small bites is how we manage to get over some of our hills like that. But yeah.
You know, I love how I love the mocking. Well, first of all, like that goes along with your two personalities. I realize everyone listening to this is going to be like, yes, sign me up to be mocked or to help mock someone else. That fits with me, my personality. So I could see this in like action where one of you goes somewhere without the other one. And as you pull out your phone to take a photo, it's like, if I don't take this receipt, I'm going to get, did you take a photo? Right? Like that's just kind of how that happens. And because you are now training your brain and that habit
Mhm.
functionality, it's like, okay, this happens. Now we're going to stack another habit, which is I'm going to play the mocking, of Zach per se now in your conversation, loop in my head until I actually do this thing. So whatever it is that works for you, whatever it is that works for, teams and leaders and, micro groups, I think just find that thing, and mocking is the thing that works for the two of you. And hey, that's
Now
you
let's be
found it.
clear here. Mocking is like just like playful, bashful things. We're not like it's a very healthy
Yes.
environment here.
Yes. I
Absolutely.
understood that, but yes, thank you for that clarity. So many of our listeners kind of took that down a detrimental path. Don't take it
Yeah.
down that path. Yeah.
Uh-uh.
Well, so there are tons of commitments. And you're right. There's some that like we have to do. We'll build our habit muscles. But when it comes to feeling overwhelmed and you're thinking, okay, I need to do something to unplug. I need something to focus on that can help me to relax, or what we call self-care. What are those things that you are drawn to? And this is the plug for Zach. Again, if you haven't listened to his episode, he has a very interesting way of what he defines as self-care and relaxation. I don't want to give it away, but Alberto, what is your thing? And is it just as nerdy as Zach's?
Well, I think Zach is nerdy, absolutely. His habit is absolutely on the nerd list. But mine, I've absolutely put it up more towards the geek. For me, kind of there's a differentiation between a nerd and a geek. Nerds
Okay.
are very much scientific. They have math involved. There's science involved. Nerd, it's usually either comic books, video games, or anime, or D&D in my case. And so I
Yeah.
listed literally every single facet that I turned to right there and then. But ultimately, I think on the days and weeks, because it happens, startup land, nonprofit space, it's very much you're working at a mission, at a vision of making something better. And especially with us here at Nonprofits HQ, where we are literally building a platform for these organizations to amplify their impact. Um, it's very easy for, and nonprofit leaders can confirm this, it's very easy to put every single fiber of your being into that mission, and then a
Yeah.
couple of months, a couple of weeks, you have this heart wrenching moment, and it just kind of demotivates you for a slight second. And it happens. Everybody faces that, and it's okay. Um, but what kind of brings me out of that kind of funk, that kind of mood, is more or less exactly what brings me back to our platform, to our thing, right? So I usually distress with when I have a really bad day, I will do absolutely. I'd be like, hey guys, emergency D&D session, let's go. And usually with that, it's we create a story. And for those of you who've played D&D, it's a chance for anybody to become the hero of the story. It's a chance for anybody to overcome challenges that otherwise you would never face in your day-to-day activities. And it's a good way to kind of expand the way that you think and address problems. And the reason why I turn to that is because very much so, you'll have players, you'll have people who engage, that create these moments of just inspiration, where what they're saying to each other, how they're interacting with each other, that is what kind of like in D&D, that's the silver lining. That's what you aim for. It's not defeating the dragon, it's not exploding a pirate ship. It's getting that moment where your players are interacting with each other and are identifying that they are the heroes of the story. Similarly with our platform, there's moments, there's as a startup land, there's moments where you're just like, oh man, I really biffed that. And then you get emails, you get testimonials, you get people who are using the platform telling you, hey, I really like it. It helped us raise $100,000 this last year. It helped us create this many events. It brought in this many volunteers. And it's those kinds of moments that you're having these crisis, you're having this kind of shutdown, and then you remind yourself, I am I am helping those individuals. I am. And so those moments of clarity, those silver line moments is what honestly, personally brings me out of it. So what I kind of go to, D&D, hands down, always. What kind of brings me back is the realization every time that I'm like, I did help that. I did make that happen. And that's kind of what brings me back every time.
I really appreciate you sharing that. You're right. I have had those experiences so many times, numerous times, and I thank you for really like shining a light on that, because in these conversations that I've been so privileged to have with so many amazing, I call them, nonprofit nerds or rock stars throughout these episodes, Alberto, like yourself, it's like we've all experienced a level of defeat, compassion fatigue, overall, burnout. Many of us struggle with, anxiety, depression. Have previous guests, right, talk about, ADD and ADHD diagnoses later in their life and how that comes into play as well. And so I think many of us in this sector are high feelers, very, very strong, like emotional intelligence. And you're right. It's like what draws us in can at times be the thing that is the thing or the things, right? That seems so much of, I don't want to say a burden, but like, so there's so much to carry. There's so much to do. There's just, we see it time and time again. And I appreciate you bringing that up, and honor that you do that, because, um, I'm going back to your very infectious laugh, which I just absolutely love it. And then here's this very like genuine, sensitive, compassionate moment of realization. And I think that will definitely resonate with so many of our listeners. So, yeah, thank you.
Of course. And to your point, like everybody faces challenges. And my only kind of hope is that to those who are listening and maybe are going through that, just remember like there's so much more there's a lot that you've done. There's a lot of good that you've helped others accomplish. And whether or not you see that right now, just note that whether it's what you're doing right now or maybe you do something else in the future, you have so much more good to do and you're going to get that done. So I cheers to everybody who's going through that. Note that yes, it is momentary. Yes, you will get back on top, and you've done a lot and you will continue to do amazing things.
Oh my gosh, I feel like that's a wrap. Yeah, you are right. And ditto to all of that. And I love that your thing is like, all right, emergency D&D session, let's go. Let's do this, right? Like that's fantastic. There's tons more questions I want to ask you. I am going to schedule a separate conversation, because most of them are around D&D. But I'd love to know, like, where can people find out more about you, Alberto? Because you've shared so much about Nonprofits HQ, so much about yourself personally, and then huge passion in startup land and nonprofits. So yeah, where's the best place for us to learn more about you?
Well, the best place to learn more about me and reach out to me really is through LinkedIn, just Alberto Carrazco on LinkedIn. And of course, at nonprofitshq.com, we are building, like I mentioned, a platform that's dedicated for nonprofit leaders, for organizations that want to amplify their impact and their mission, everything about it. We're here for you. We want to make sure that we give you the support, the tools that are needed for you to evolve as an organization and to protect the legacy that you're building for yourself and your community. So you'll see me talking about this all the time, where nonprofits dear and near to my heart, bleed and sweat nonprofit here. So ultimately, if you opened up a nonprofit or you've been in a nonprofit space for a long time and you need someone to talk to about all things nonprofit, by all means, send me a DM, send me a message in LinkedIn. I'll absolutely grab virtual coffee with you. So absolutely, just reach out and I'd love to connect.
Yes, please do check out Alberto, on LinkedIn, and then certainly check out the platform, Nonprofits HQ. Well, before we sign off and say thank you and goodbye and all those good things, are there any final words, Alberto, any final words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Of course, especially listeners to this podcast, because everybody, regardless of what their background is, anyone really has interacted with a nonprofit, whether they volunteered, whether they've worked at one, they've been recipients of one. I personally was a recipient of Paz de Cristo out in Phoenix. It was like a soup kitchen, I guess. And so when I first came to the US, we didn't have much. And so our parents took us there. And so sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Back to my
I
point.
love the story. I'm here for it.
Everyone has engaged with the nonprofit in one way or another. And so last parting thoughts is just remember that you have the potential of being a hero for them, whether you're volunteering, whether you're working with them, or just sharing the word of what they're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Nonprofits are the way that we make a change in the community. And to everyone out there, be that hero.
Beautifully said. What an inspirational moment to leave us with. Alberto, thank you. I appreciate you joining me in this conversation.
Of course. And thank you for having me.